Shalom. Many years ago, I was invited to Portland, Oregon to teach over a weekend. Typically, that kind of invitation would involve one congregation or communal institution. But at that time, Portland had a fairly small Jewish population divided among several congregations, and they cooperatively sponsored the visit. On Shabbat morning, I was at the traditional congregation, and I was asked to teach the children and the teens. It was Parashat Lech Lecha. I decided to divide about 25 children and teens into groups of 3 and assigned each a portion of the Abraham stories, asking all of them just one question. Who is Abraham? What is he like as a person? The stories included Abraham being called in chapter 12 of Breshit, Abraham and Sarah in Egypt and in Gerar. One is in chapter 12 and the second version is in chapter 20. Abraham and Lot and their shepherds, chapter 13. Abraham rescues Lot, chapter 14. Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar, chapter 15. Abraham and his 3 guests, chapter 18. Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, Ishmael, and Isaac, chapter 21. And the Akedah, chapter 22. It turned out really well. The pupils were enthusiastic as they reported to their parents and the synagogue staff. The mixed age groups worked out, with younger pupils being excited to study with older ones, and older pupils enjoying playing the role of mentors. The truth is that Abraham is a really complicated personality. I recall a conversation with a Christian educator who said to me, and I quote, "We Christian educators have a problem that you Jewish educators do not have." "Oh," I said, "tell me about it." He went on to explain that Christian educators try to help pupils identify with an image of perfection, which is the way that Jesus is basically presented in the Christian Bible. In the Hebrew Bible, we encounter flesh and blood characters who sometimes rise to greatness, sometimes puzzle, and even disappoint us. In that sense, they are accessible models, similar to some extent to people we encounter every day, including parents, siblings, teachers, and friends. Abraham is a very courageous person, leaving one of the most sophisticated cities in the ancient world to go to an unknown destination. His great faith is reflected in the number of times and places where he builds an altar. He's courageous enough to fight a war against powerful kings, and even more courageous to argue with God, demanding that God meet God's own standards of justice. Yet, he places his wife in danger twice, is insensitive to her pain, agrees to banish his wife and son, and agrees to offer his only remaining son to God. Even in its terse form, the Torah leaves us wondering about the ultimate impact of that last scene, which we'll be talking about next week. There is no mention after the Akedah of any contact between Abraham and Isaac, Abraham and Sarah, or Abraham and God. The Midrash opines that Isaac was sent to the yeshiva established by Shem and Aver, 2 personalities who appear in the period before Abraham. It is clear that they too had to puzzle over this matter, and that's what they came up with. So we're left to wonder what happened to the family, and we'll think more about that in the next session. So Abraham is no cardboard saint. He was the first to break out of the culture of his birth society, risking life and limb to follow the call of God. He shows both nobility of character and a shrewd sense of political savvy and self-protection. He's the father of the Jewish people, the Arabs, and the Christians. We each have our own images of him, but he symbolizes the messianic hope of people breaking down some of the barriers that separate them and recognizing the bonds that tie them together. Shalom.